Canadian police broke through the door of a pipeline blockade to arrest journalists and Indigenous leaders who were simply defending their land. And there is now video of this interaction. So this is over the Coastal GasLink Pipeline that is 670, or going to be 670 kilometers long, being built through Indigenous land and through 625 bodies of water. Now, earlier this week, I covered a little more on the pipeline, so you can go watch that video if you want a little more information on the pipeline and the money behind it. But let me get to this video here. So this was recorded by Michael Toledano. He is one of the journalists that were arrested. So he tweets out here, 4 days ago, I was arrested at gunpoint for filming RCMP tactical teams as they pointed guns to remove Wet'suwet'en people from their lands. My arrest and incarceration were punitive and a blatant attempt to repress images of police violence against Indigenous people in Canada. So let me play this footage for you, and I'll share a little more here from Michael Toledano and his experience. But first, this is from Democracy Now! And their coverage of this.
And Wet'suwet'en land defender Slado, also known as Molly Wickham, was released from jail Tuesday evening after being arrested Friday during a violent raid by Canadian federal police on one of the camps set up to keep Coastal GasLink out of sovereign Indigenous territory. The raid ended a 56-day blockade of the drilling site in Canada. The 400-mile pipeline within Wet'suwet'en land violates both Indigenous and Canadian laws. 15 people in total were arrested Friday, including 2 journalists. One of them was documentary filmmaker Michael Toledano, who just released this dramatic footage of the raid.
They're walking to the door. They're breaking it down.
Breaking down the door.
Get out here.
Breaking down the door.
Hey, show me hands. Show me hands.
Get that gun off me! Get your gun off me! Lower your gun!
I want to see everybody's
Get your gun off me! This is sovereign Wet'suwet'en land!
The RCMP have breached the door. They are acting under the authority of the injunction.
Attack dogs are there.
There are attack dogs here.
Standing there, right
Militarized
beside the door.
police. They used axes found in camp to break down the door.
And a chainsaw.
And a chainsaw that they found in camp.
Molly, you're under arrest.
Don't touch me!
Don't touch her!
Get your hands off of her!
You're under arrest.
Get your hands off of her!
Come here. You're under arrest.
Wet'suwet'en territory!
And filming a documentary for CBC
No
television.
problem. You're under arrest. Get that out of my face and back up. You're under arrest.
For the record, I'm a member of the media. You've been notified that I'm here. I'm observing.
arrest right now, so step out. Okay.
I'm coming with you. I'm coming with you.
Camera down.
You're under arrest.
You don't want to break.
Let's let that guy go.
I'm a member of the media. I'm filming a documentary for CBC television. You are twisting my wrist. I'm a member of the media. I'm filming a documentary for CBC television. I have press credentials.
All right, so in that video, you see the Royal Canadian Mounted Police break down the door with an axe and with the chainsaw. They then arrest Indigenous leaders and also arrest the 2 journalists who identify themselves as journalists, but they still get arrested even though they're just there covering what is going on. Michael Toledano on Twitter goes on to say this. This is the footage I was jailed for. It shows how Canada asserts ownership of Indigenous lands. It shows how Canada builds pipelines. It shows how RCMP view Wet'suwet'en women. It shows what Trudeau means by rule of law. Raw footage is now with dozens of news networks. He goes on to say here, I have no doubt in my mind that my arrest was targeted. One officer who I have encountered many times on Wet'suwet'en territory gloated about the arrest. When my handcuffs broke and had to be hacksawed off, one officer said he would keep them as a souvenir. Now, I also want to share this. So Michael Toledano here replying to a video of Mike Farnworth. He's the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General for BC and a member of the NDP. He tweets out here, watch Michael Farnworth lie about myself and Amber Bracken, the other journalist who was arrested, our incarceration. We were still in jail when he made this statement. Check this out.
All I will comment on at this point is that the RCMP were enforcing a court injunction. As you know, I do not direct the RCMP. I do know that 2 journalists were detained and were subsequently released.
Right there, Michael Farnworth claims that the journalists were released. but they weren't. As he was saying that, they were not released. So, not sure who he was talking about there, but here you have the BC NDP just completely in line with all of this, and the federal NDP not willing to call out the BC NDP and Horgan, the premier, for what is going on here. Also, this reply was to Michael Toledano on Twitter saying, "Where's the first hour of footage where the police asked them nicely to leave and read out the injunction?" And Michael Toledano replies here saying, "We were never read the injunction." So they were never told why they're being arrested, just got arrested and pulled away. More here. One of the Indigenous land defenders who was arrested, Slato, also known as Molly Wickham, had this to say, quote, "The Wet'suwet'en people, under the governance of their hereditary chiefs, are standing in the way of the largest fracking project in Canadian history. Our medicines, our berries, our food, the animals, our water, our culture, our homes are all here since time immemorial. We will never abandon our children to live in a world with no clean water. We uphold our ancestral responsibilities. There will be no pipelines on Wet'suwet'en territory." Last thing here, the BC NDP, Horgan's NDP, have been suppressing a party debate on the liquid natural gas industry, insiders say. So a moratorium vote on industry at center of Wet'suwet'en standoff has been quashed repeatedly over 2 years. So if you go through this piece, it's a great piece in Breach Media, breachmedia.ca. I'll link to it below the video as well. But you have various examples here of how party leadership has been unwilling to have a debate and a vote on the LNG industry because they know that their members are against it. So they have been delaying it, putting it off, not answering questions, even going as far as to disable the chat in Zoom conversations. But to show you just how poorly the NDP has been on this particular issue, more here from Breach Media. Quote, "While the NDP opposed the BC Liberals' fracking bonanza while in the opposition, upon forming government, the NDP has simply gone with the flow," said William Carroll, a professor of sociology at University of Victoria and co-director of the Corporate Mapping Project, which tracks the power of the fossil fuel sector. Quote, "That has included giving handouts, which would make some BC Liberals blush, to an industry that needs to be sunset to respect what climate scientists are telling us. According to a study by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, the NDP government, quote, has offered a much sweeter deal to the LNG industry than what the previous government was willing to extend. Overall, fossil fuel subsidies have doubled since Horgan took office, with the provincial government spending $1.3 billion between 2020 and 2021 alone." You know, disappointment is an understatement here. They're worse than the previous government. So this NDP party here that is supposed to be to the left of the other parties, this New Democratic Party is clearly just doing the bidding of these fossil fuel industries in a way that would even make, as quoted here, the Liberals blush. Another example of a completely disappointing NDP government. You see it, you know, the few times that they've gained power. I mentioned this in the previous video as well. Be it Ontario, Alberta, BC now, they've just been massive failures. How do you expect to grow the party, to grow support, to grow any trust if this is what you do when you gain power? And for the federal NDP and Jagmeet Singh to not be willing to go on the record publicly calling this out and condemning the BC NDP, all it does is destroy your credibility and make it impossible for people to trust you. If you were actually to get into power, be able to trust that you would actually be there to stand up for people, to stand up for the climate, and to stand up for Indigenous people.